Charter Acts. The Regulating Act of 1773 was a significant piece of legislation passed by the British Parliament concerning the governance of British India. The Governor of Bengal was elevated to the position of Governor General, giving him authority over other British possessions in India. It also brought Bombay and Madras under some degree of central control. Quits India Act of 1784 was another significant legislative measure passed by the British Parliament regarding the governance of British India. The Act sought to separate the commercial and political functions of the British East India Company in India. The Act established the Court of Directors for Commercial Affairs and the Board of Control for Political Matters, both accountable to Parliament to govern British possessions in India. The Charter Act of 1833 elevated the Governor-General of Bengal to Governor-General of India, granting exclusive legislative power over the entire subcontinent. It also separated commercial and administrative bodies within the East India Company. Charter Act of 1853. The Act merged legislative and executive functions under the Governor-General's Council. It established open competitions for civil service recruitment. The Act prolonged the East India Company's authority over Indian territories. It introduced provincial government appointment of 4 out of 6 new legislative members in the Indian Legislative Council. 1858. The Act renamed the Governor-General of India, the Viceroy of India, directly representing the British Crown. It abolished the system of double government by removing the Board of Control and the Court of Directors. The Act introduced the Secretary of State for India, granting full authority over Indian administration. It formed a 15-member Council of India to advise the Secretary of State, with the Secretary of State as its chairman. Indian Council Act of 1861. Indians were included in lawmaking through nomination to the Legislative Council by the Viceroy. Decentralization was initiated by restoring legislative powers to Bombay and Madras, reversing the centralization trend. Introduction of new legislative councils in Bengal, Northwest Provinces and Punjab. Indian Councils Act of 1892 increased membership in both central and provincial legislative councils. Legislative councils gained functions such as discussing the budget. 1909, considerable expansion in the size of legislative councils at both central and provincial levels. Official majority retained in the Central Legislative Council. Indians were included in executive councils of the Viceroy and the governors. Introduction of separate electorate for Muslims, legalizing communal representation. 1919, the Government of India Act of 1919, known as the Montesquieu-Chelmsford Reforms, brought significant changes. Both central and provincial governments gained legislative authority. Council of State and Legislative Assembly were introduced. 3 out of 6 members of the Viceroy's Executive Council were Indian. Separate electorates for Sikh, Indian Christians, Anglo-Indians and Europeans. Voting rights were restricted based on property tax or education. Functions of the Secretary of State for India were shared with the High Commissioner. A Public Service Commission was established. A commission was appointed to assess the Act's functioning after 10 years. Government of India Act 1935 introduced federal, provincial and concurrent lists for governance, ended hierarchy, granting provinces autonomy in governance. Bicameral legislatures were introduced in 6 provinces, extended separate electorates to scheduled castes, women and labourers. The Act expanded the scope of the franchise, eliminated the Council of India, established the Reserve Bank of India (RBI), Federal Public Service Commission, Provincial Public Service Commission and Joint Public Service Commission. Indian Independence Act of 1947 brought about significant changes, brought an end to British rule in the Indian subcontinent, leading to the creation of 2 separate nations, India and Pakistan, eliminated the positions of Viceroy and Secretary of State for India. Governor-General of India and provincial governors became constitutional heads, granted constituent assemblies the authority to draft and adopt constitutions for governance. That's it for this video, guys. If you like this and if you found this useful, I think you will also like my Indian history playlist. Check that out. Links in the description.